Okay, we're here with an old school video tag, and I'm super excited to do this because when I first started discovering YouTube, BookTube, Bookstagram, and Book Talk, a lot of people were doing these kind of like tag videos in which they were answering like a preset list of questions, and I always love doing those because it's always just so fun to kind of hear different people's perspectives on the same topic, and especially in the context of reading, I think there's just like so much to discuss. So I'm more than honored and I feel just so excited to be doing this. The title of the tag is What Matters About Reading. Sophie of Biblio Sophie, who's one of the reasons why I'm even creating videos or anything book related on the internet. Like she's the one who tagged me, and I'm just like having such a like pinch me moment. But anyway, I'm going to start with the questions because there's 9 of them and I'm a chatty person, so I'm gonna go through them, and then in the comments or in the description of the video I'm going to tag some of my favorite book creators on YouTube, and I'm really just begging you to please do your version of this because it's so incredibly fun and it will mean a lot to me for you to participate in this. So without further ado, let's just start with the first question. I have some notes here that I'm kind of going to be looking at. So the first question is, what do you want to get out of reading? You know, when you're reading, like what are you looking for? What are you trying to get out of it? And my way of answering this question obviously is very much determined by where I am in life right now. And you know, it will come as no surprise to you that, you know, for me, reading is not separate from my life. For me, reading is a part of my life. And in a way, you know, what I'm reading is not very different from what I'm kind of thinking about, dealing with, trying to understand as a human. And then, of course, then the reading kind of reflects where I'm at in the current moment, and that changes. So in my life right now, I'm really just working on understanding myself truly, really, and accepting myself and then just being myself. And I know that this may sound like really kind of strange, a strange thing to hear from a 45-year-old, but you know, I feel like, you know, in your 20s you feel like you know everything that there is to know about yourself, and then life kind of like slaps you around a few times and you go through a period of like a lot of confusion and uncertainty and questioning about who you truly are. And especially in my particular case, you know, when I became a mom 8 years ago, like that triggered a lot of exploration and just kind of thinking like, okay, like I thought I had like a pretty set idea of myself, and then this thing happened and it just completely changed my life, but it completely changed me. So over the last 8 years, like I have been just kind of really going inward and like trying to figure out like who, you know, in the world, you know, is there anyone there? And I know that like a lot of people will say there's no one there, you know, but anyway, so when I say that I'm working on, you know, understanding myself and like accepting myself and just like being myself, when I get to a certain level of, you know, clarity, like I really want to live it. And I think that a lot of my quote unquote success in figuring myself out actually has come from books, and the books that the books that kind of are books that are unique and clear about themselves, the worlds that they build, the characters that they introduce, and then just kind of like fully doing that thing unapologetically without explaining. Like that's sort of what I'm looking for, and that's what I'm looking for in reading, and that's what I'm trying to get out of it. So if you kind of think about like some of the books that I have talked to you guys about ad nauseum, you know, anything by Claire Louise Bennett. I love Catherine Lacey's work. I love just books that are just recently reading Anne Carson gave me that feeling. Reading Open Throat by Henry Hoke. Like, these are the types of works that I'm talking about that are just like, you know, very specific and clear in the way that they present the world that they deal with and live within, and then just like truly doing that, going for it 150%. Like, that's what I'm looking for, because that's what I'm trying to be and live in my real life. Be clear about who I am and just like doing that all the time as hard as I can. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for, ideas on how to do that. The second question is, what is reading with intention? And for me, what reading with intention means is making decisions on what to read and how to read that are fully grounded in internal forces. So what I mean by that is, you know, like a lot of people, I've spent many years reading best of lists, following coverage in the New York Times, or trying to kind of like work my way down like a long list or like a short list of big prestigious award nominees. And you know, I think that this is great. I mean, just nothing wrong with that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, that's not what intentionality means in reading in my life right now. For me, it means like, okay, be very clear about what you're choosing and how you want to read the thing that you're choosing in a way that's just kind of aligned with how you feel inside. If you're picking a book off a list, just know that you're picking it for yourself and it just happens to be on the list, not the other way around. So in very specific ways, what that means for me is, you know, like kind of ignoring the list. I know I'm coming across as really negative on the list, and I really don't mean it in that way. It's just that I follow them, I'm interested in them, but it's more of a background. It's not like it's not the defining force behind what I choose to read. I'm not trying to keep up with any kind of like buzzy anything. In fact, a very good way to completely just like put me off a book is to just like hype it up too much. And I understand that I end up doing that for the books I like, but you know what I mean? Like, there's some books that kind of like become like everything that everybody's talking about in like a very I don't know, like professional way, and that just really bothers me. I try not to read that way. I also try, you know, like I have obviously ideas, like I've shared so much about my reading projects and kind of things that I'm building towards, but I never in any moment I want to be reading something because it's on my list. Like, when I complete a book, I try to, you know, pause and just kind of reflect on that, and then when I'm trying to choose the next book that I'm reading, I pause and think about it and try to like really actively choose it. Like, I don't want to be like, well, you know, it's this time of the month, this book is coming out, I need to like read it and write about it. Like, I don't want to do that. So instead, what I say to myself is like, pause, like really feel how you feel, think about how you like what you're thinking about, and then based on that, pick the next thing, which may happen to be on my list of like reading projects or whatever, but that's not what's driving the choice. I hope that distinction makes sense to you guys. And then, you know, there's also like, I'm trying to be intentional about like paying attention to the words on the page, not like running through things just to like start and complete them. So pace has a lot to do with it. And then finally, I really read, I know that I share publicly, but I read for myself, and I really try to pay attention to what the book means to me with, like, I try to be really thoughtful about that, as opposed to, you know, the work of what, like, a, you know, traditional critic may be, you know, reading the book and describing it in a way that is like more kind of concerned about, you know, the text itself, and you know, situating that work with a larger context around the author or the themes or whatever. Like, you know, I understand that that's one way to read, but for me, reading intentionally means reading in a way that connects with my personal experience with that book. Hope that makes sense. Okay, question number 3, and I need to probably speed up a little bit, but what interests you about somebody else's relationship to books? I love this question, and I really took some time to think about it, because I really truly love following so many friends, and friends that I've met and actually had personal conversations with about books, but also so many people that share their reading life that, you know, have no idea that I exist. Truly, book content on the internet is my favorite content to consume. And I think that I like, when I'm really honest about, you know, like, I am nosy, but why am I so nosy? I think that I'm really just interested in how people think of themselves and define themselves and articulate who they think they are and who they want to become. And I think that when you kind of have a conversation with someone about books and their reading, or watch their videos or read their Substack about what they're choosing to read, like, you get a really good sense of that. And in a way, it's not that type of sharing and that type of reading is not it's not different from you know, like, other favorite genres of digital sharing that I'm obsessed with. So, for example, you know, monthly favorites videos that people share, or what's in my bag kind of posts and little stories. Like, I love that, because I think it's just a very kind of immediate and practical way of demonstrating, like, what you think you're about and what you really are about. Because, you know, the a lot of what we put out into the world is so aspirational, but when you actually share, you know, when you share about what you've read, that's something that is very telling, because it takes time to pick a book and actually read it. So the choice and the activity around it is super meaningful, I think. Okay. I hope this is interesting for you guys. I'm really enjoying it. Question number 4: Do you talk about books, and what do you talk about books with others, and what do you usually want them to know about a book? So I guess if I'm sharing about a book, what do I want to tell them? So yes, I do talk about books, and what I am personally very interested in is character and interiority. So the books that I like to read and talk about are books that basically show us not necessarily what people do, but how they think about what they're doing or going through in their life. Plot is not super important to me. I only am interested in plot as, you know, only as much as it reveals about the humans going through it. And then I guess I was just reading something that Jacqueline Hartman wrote, and she said that, you know, the job of the writer is to witness the folly of humanity. And I think that is just such a lovely way to put it. I really love that way of describing writing and the work of the writer, but also that's what drives me as a reader. I love reading so that I can understand more about you know, why people do silly, stupid, reckless things that we do. And I take a lot of comfort in being in a book that shows a really flawed character, somebody who's making poor choices, but reading that story from the perspective or being told with like a lot of compassion and empathy, so that I can kind of like get like a good understanding of why people do what they do. Examples of authors that I love, that I think are extremely good at that. I'll just give you one. Like right now, like I've been obsessed with Constance Dupé. She's a French author, and a lot of her work is autobiographical. And she, I guess she's somebody that I look to as an example of writing with a lot of compassion and self-compassion. So, yeah. It's like it's the same thing. I think that it's the same reason why a lot of people read romance, or like kind of like cozy romance or whatever, comfort, to just kind of feel good about the world and humanity. And I think even though I don't read romance, I read a lot of stories about just really like messed up people, but told in a perspective that makes me really feel for them. And in doing so, I think I just like think a lot about how to develop compassion for myself and others around me based on that. Okay, I'm as I'm talking, I'm realizing that I'm kind of like sliding away from the questions, but that's, this show business. We're just gonna keep going. Do you review books privately or publicly? So I I review books publicly. For those of you who kind of are coming across this video, randomly, this is your first encounter with me. I write a newsletter on Substack titled "I'm Reading Live," where I share, I share what I'm reading, what I'm like hoping to read, and then just like personal essays inspired by my reading life. And I've started referring to that practice as vernacular reading. So obviously I read on my own, but then I find a lot of pleasure and value in sharing conversation with others about the books that I read. It helps me in so many different ways find connection and community, but also in very specific ways. I think anybody who has shared writing or thinking on the internet knows that the moment you kind of sit down and start talking about the thing you're talking about, like it really forces you to kind of clarify your thinking about it. So to me, that's the biggest benefit behind sharing publicly. And in fact, if you're somebody who loves to read and is kind of really curious about this world that we are in, about books and sharing, I really encourage you to try it and just like go for it, because even if you don't find like a lot of like a big following, I know that takes some time to develop, you will start feeling the benefit of writing and sharing your thinking about your books immediately. That feels really special. Okay, question number 6, rating systems. Do you do that? Do you read books? Essentially the question is, do you read books? And my question is that I do not. I feel pretty strongly about this, and I don't even think that it's very controversial at this point, but basically my take on this is that if a book is really good, a star rating or like some simple designation of like whether I liked it or not, or recommend or not, I feel like that's on its own, obviously it's just like completely insufficient. And then, as even on the flip side, if you think about a book that you do not like or do not appreciate or did not work for you for whatever reason, I still, as somebody who's actually working on a book, I have such just like mad respect for anybody who has tried to write a book that I could never, I don't know, I just feel very uncomfortable just like giving a bad review or bad star rating on something that somebody poured so much of themselves into. So because of all of that, I just don't read books. Question number 7. Do you ask yourself if you liked a book, how much liking a book matters? So the short answer of that question is that I do, I mean, I may say I really like this, but what I mean by that is, I may use those words, but what I truly mean by that, like in order for me to say that I like the book, there's 2 things that need to have happened. I need, like, the book fit, how do I phrase this? The book met me where I was in life. I was ready for it, and I was able to receive it. And I think that like a lot of goes into that. What's happened, like, are you well rested? Do you have difficult things going on in your life at the moment? Are you in a happy season? Are you in a sad season? So much. What did you read? Like what did you read last week? And it's still kind of with you, because all of these things will then, in my case anyway, determine on whether a book fits or doesn't fit with me in a particular moment. So that's number 1. And then the other part of, what goes into like me deciding whether I like a book or not is like, did it keep me engaged, intrigued, interested? And that is just more about like the storytelling, the language, the characterization. Was there enough there that even if I didn't quite, quote unquote, like it, I still wanted to keep going? So some interesting books that I can kind of, I was trying to think of like, okay, what is a good example of that process or that experience for me? A book that a lot of people I know love, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I read it and the book kept me engaged because the writing is interesting, the character is cool, the main narrator is kooky and unusual and odd, and these are all things that I typically appreciate. But I felt that as I was reading it at the time, it felt like really kind of like childish and immature, and it did not quite connect with me as a human. I think that maybe I read it in my 40s, so in a way I feel like maybe this is just like a younger person novel. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong about that, but that was an example for me, a book that did not work for me, even though there was a lot that I appreciated about it. Another book that I've read recently that was like, did I like it? Like the question feels almost like irrelevant. Like, so the Last Samurai by Helen DeWitt, this was a book that I've really appreciated and connected with. And that was a book that, even though on a sentence level, I did not love all of it. A lot of it was like confusing and almost like annoying to read. Some of it was quite tedious to get through. I still felt that there was enough in the story and the way that the story was being told that I could personally connect to on a very intimate level, that made me feel like, this is worth struggling through. And then in addition to like the personal aspect, there was just a lot of ideas in the book. I love an ideas book. That again, even when certain sections kind of felt a little bit laggy and just like dragging on, like I still felt like I can tell that there is an idea here and I'm able to track it, stay with it. So I love that book, and I know that people have struggled with it, and it's kind of a polarizing story, I think, because of that. So okay, so what do you seek? Question number 8, almost there. What do you seek from others who read publicly. Reviews, summaries, analysis, curriculum. These are some of the options that Sophie has listed under the question. And from me, I would say that I'm looking for curriculum, basically, feed my list, grow my awareness, what is out there, especially because in the last couple of years, I have really moved away from reading, new releases. I used to be one of those people that just kind of try to keep up with, whatever was like new and exciting that was coming out. And that's what fed my TBR. But over the last couple of years, like I read less like that. I'm more kind of digging through backlists, just finding authors that I'm really connecting with, and just kind of going on author rabbit holes and then seeing where that takes me. So I have actually really appreciated my friendships with other readers and how their taste and their experience in sharing in reading has been kind of feeding my curriculum, like my reading lists. So that's the first thing that I'm looking for. The second thing that I'm looking for is review, and I may be kind of minority in this one, but I am not looking for really detailed reviews. I just really am looking for enough detail and substance and specificity in whatever review is being shared about a book, just so I can kind of figure out, like, okay, is there enough there to intrigue me and make me want to read a book on my own? Because I'm going to make my own judgment. A lot of my experience with a book is determined by where I am in life and in a particular moment. So in a way, I just feel like, don't give out too much of whatever's in the book. Like I will deal with that on my own. Just give me enough reasons to know if I should try. So that's number 2, reviews. And then number 3, context. So context, and what I mean by that is just personal context. And I know that this is probably a little bit unconventional, and maybe even like some people will say this is like totally like the wrong way to want to read, and maybe this is like bad advice, but I don't care. This is how I read, and this is what I'm thinking about. Like I want to understand more about the reader, because what I know about the reader, I think, helps me make judgments about whether I want to follow their recommendations, and I will know what to do with their taste. I think that for example, like I love getting recommendations from artists. So Sophie is a musician, Ben is a dancer. I'll tag them both. And I just feel like there's something about the creative soul that selects text and interacts with text in a way that is very different. To me, that is a meaningful biographical note that I want to follow. If I'm going to like listen to your recommendations, not to say that there's nothing deterministic about that. I just want to understand it and know it. It kind of filters into like my desire to like follow your recommendations or interest. I hope this doesn't come across as like a snobbish thing. That's not what I mean. Like I'm not saying that like if you're like, I don't know. I think that everybody has an interesting point of view. I think that some people are just better at articulating it and bringing it into their reading. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So the final question is like, where do you go for those things? Where do you go for recommendations? Where do you go for ideas? And for me, this has changed over the last 2 years. As I was saying, earlier on, I used to really look for, I really used to go to like the New York Times and like just literary magazines and journals for recommendations. And I think looking back on that, I think in many ways that was the choice and preference of a younger person who was still looking to authority for direction. And now, as a 45-year-old, as somebody who's a little bit more confident in who I am, and I don't think that like I'm all that. I've just kind of gotten to a place where I understand and accept myself better. So then, from that perspective of self-trust and self-confidence, I can then go and look for ideas um, that are less like kind of like top down, but more kind of peer formed. So I love following readers on YouTube, Substack, um, Instagram, and TikTok. That's where I get most of my ideas. And then I also get a lot of ideas from the books and the authors that I'm enjoying myself. So if I'm reading a book that mentions an author or a book title, I make a note of that. If I find that a book that I love has been blurbed by someone that I'm not familiar with, like I'll research that. But it's a lot, like it's very kind of like bottom up decision making as opposed to like top down. Like, I don't like I spend too much time looking to authority, and then I'm just being almost like stubborn against that approach to reading, but also to life. And then of course, like if I am really enjoying a book and just wanting to stay in its world and know more about it, the author, the background, the setting, whatever it is may happen to be, then I will go to like professional reviews about it, or just like criticism, like formal criticism about it, things like that. So that was the final question. 9 questions. We've been chatting for about 30 minutes. I think it's not too bad. Honestly, I love the questions. Sophie, you did such an amazing job defining them. And I feel like any one of the questions could be like a whole conversation on its own, and maybe we can continue that conversation. I would be so interested in hearing your personal responses to this. And as I said in the beginning, I'm going to tag some people that I'm begging, please do your own version of this tag, because if I'm tagging you, it's because I really love and appreciate your perspective and point of view. So please make my day and make your own video and share with us. If you have any questions about anything that I said, or if you want me to elaborate a little bit more, let me know. Thank you so much. And if you have not subscribed, please do so.